Welcome everyone to the HR Green Room, the place where people, culture, and a couple of splashes of green come together. We're your hosts. I'm James Proctor, Chief Operating Officer at Phase 3.
And I'm Louise Johnston, Head of Customer Success at Phase 3.
And together we lift the curtain on the world of HR with fresh ideas, honest conversations, and a few surprises along the way. Each episode will ask what made us green with envy, what deserves the green light in the world of HR, and of course we'll be joined by some brilliant guests who bring their own colour to the conversation. So grab a seat, the show's about to start in the HR Green Room. So, Louise, I'm joined by you today, our new co-host.
Yes, it's
Welcome.
lovely to be here.
Thank you. Welcome to the HR Green Room. We should say a massive thank you to Michelle Hare at Sage, who started the podcast with us. And unfortunately, due to various commitments, we've decided that we're going to do it with Phase 3 predominantly, but Sage will still be joining us as guests on a number of the episodes as well. So we will welcome Michelle to a future session. So Head of Customer Success at Sage has now been replaced by Louise, our fabulous Head of Customer Success at Phase 3. And we've done these kind of things many times, haven't we?
We have, but I still feel like they're big boots to fill.
Yeah.
So thanks, Michelle.
Yeah. So we're going to start this episode just by telling you a little bit more about who we are, what we do, our backgrounds. So Louise and I have shared our stories with each other many times, and you've probably seen us if you've been at CIPD events or Festival of Work, those kind of things. We're often on stage together, aren't we, discussing various things in HR tech. So we're going to bring that to a podcast format instead, and we're going to have lots of guests and interesting topics to discuss. So today is more of just an introduction into the podcast. So for those who don't know me, I'm James Proctor, Chief Operating Officer at Phase 3. I've been at Phase 3 for 12 years this year. So I was employee number 5 all those years ago. And obviously we've grown rapidly. Are you at 8 years now? 10, of course.
How could you forget
How
them?
did I forget the 10-year anniversary this year? Yeah.
10 years of us.
10 years together, yeah. So both of us quite a decent tenure at Phase 3, and we've worked in HR, payroll and finance technology for a while. I joined as a consultant actually at Phase 3, so prior to that, I'll start with the beginning of my career history because I think it's always interesting to see where people started from. I actually, at school, wanted to be a chef. I don't know if I've ever told you that before, but I wanted to be a chef and I wanted to work in hospitality. And so I did work experience, and I was going to go to college to do catering and hospitality management. And the college that I was going to go to, Wakefield College, didn't have enough people to run that course. So I kind of reassessed my options. And at GCSE, I'd enjoyed doing business studies. So I thought, why not? I'll do business studies again. And I'd done A-level business studies at GCSE because I found it a bit easy. So I ended up having to pick up another course as well. So I did psychology, sociology, double business studies, English literature, and then I had to do an MVQ in admin as well just to make up my week in the college. So I'd been involved in some admin roles, and I really liked the HR part of business studies. And I always remember the textbook started with HR do the hiring and the firing.
Yeah.
I think that it couldn't be further from the truth, really, could it? Because if HR are hiring or firing, then there's a problem, really, isn't there? But I always remember that from the textbook. And so I started as a weekend job through college at a hotel. And we did banqueting and I did reception. And
Is that where you spilt gravy all down someone's wedding dress?
Tomato soup.
There's a story here.
There
I
is
do
a story
remember it.
there.
Right.
Yeah. Tomato soup went down the bride. So it was quite a fancy hotel, to be fair, and one I aspired to sort of manage. It was that kind of really, really nice place. And it had a clip-down dance floor when you were in the banqueting suite. So to serve soup, you had a tureen on your wrist and the bowls in your hand and the ladle in the other hand. So you're walking across, white glove service.
A disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Clipped the edge of the dance floor. And you know when you see something in slow motion, I saw the tureen kind of tumbling towards the bride. It landed on the floor, went all up her dress and all up me. So she, thankfully, big puffy dress was okay. I was burnt because it was red hot tomato soup. So I had to spend the rest of my shift sat behind reception with no trousers on. So
Did you get the job? Did you manage the hotel in the end?
No. So I decided during that time that hospitality management wasn't for me. Yeah, no. I kind of looked at the chefs, and that was where I aspired to it, more in the kitchen and in the kind of running the pass. And I just found that the hours weren't great. The social aspect of it wasn't great. We were finishing work at 11 p.m. on a Saturday and then going out for an hour. And the chefs were back at 5:30 ready to start breakfast. So, quickly realised that wasn't for me. So then I went to college, as I said, did business studies. And then, unusually, I think, for a HR person, straight out of college, I went to university to study HR.
Okay.
And I was the only person on my course that was there from college. Everybody else was a adult learner who was in the profession.
You didn't have the experience. It was just straight into college.
It, yeah. And whilst I was at university, I was working in a garden centre on a weekend. And my course was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning. And then Thursday afternoon and Friday, I had one seminar on a Friday morning. So I got a job through Pertemps, actually, a temping agency at North Yorkshire Police, first of all, in HR. So I did a recruitment administrator role there whilst I was at university. And then the next job was, it was in Middlesbrough Council, and they were expecting an Ofsted or a CQC inspection. And so they wanted somebody to review all their personal files. So we had a checklist of everything we had to look through. So a couple of thousand staff in social services going through their personal files. And that was one of the best insights I've ever had into
Delightful.
HR.
What did you see?
Exactly.
Personnel files.
Personnel files, yeah. And obviously paper. There were cardboard files. Some were very thick, some were very thin. But it was really interesting to learn about children's services, adult social care, refuse collection, all these different services in a council, and reading through personal files in terms of grievances, disciplinaries that had happened, because you had to have a full record of everything that was on the file. And so I did that for about 6 months, and then the inspection came, and that involved me going out and meeting a lot of these people to get a copy of their passport or do a refresh DBS with them because they've not had one. And so that was quite an interesting introduction into HR. And then whilst I was at Middlesbrough Council, the employee services team, as it was called, if you did HR, you had to do payroll as well, which again at the time was quite uncommon to have double discipline. So they paid for us through Stockton College to do a course in payroll. So we did an IAB in manual payroll and then moved on to computerized payroll and became CIPP qualified. And so from that time, I'd done HR and payroll, employee services. And when I left university, I stayed there for another year in employee services. And I think that transactional HR I found really interesting because you got to see all aspects of HR.
Just how it works.
Yeah.
And I think what's reminded me of some of my past experiences, when you say that some of the personnel files were really thin, some were really big. It's like, well, how much can happen with one person? And then you start to realise when you're out there, you know, meeting the humans, you are human resources at the end of the day, that it's not just a personnel file. These are people, employees, humans.
Running a children's home with children kicking off and having, you know, big issues themselves. And the bit that we did was massively unimportant to them in terms of HR. So yeah, then I stayed in public sector for a while, moved to another large local authority, progressed there. And I was in a situation where I moved back from university to home and I applied at the local authority there and got a temporary job. And then the team leader went on maternity leave. So I applied for that and got that role because I knew HR and payroll. I think I had the edge there. And then through a restructure, my temporary role was deleted. And so it was either leave or go for the payroll manager job. So I applied for the payroll manager's job, having had at that point quite a bit of experience in payroll and in running it in various systems as well. And surprisingly, I think to most of the team, I got the job. So I was the youngest manager in the council at the time.
Why were they surprised? Because you were the youngest?
Because I was young.
Right.
Because I was male, I think, if we're being honest. It was a very female-dominated team, the payroll team. And the people who I was managing were 35 to 40 years my senior and had worked in the same local authority for most of their careers. So it's a little bit like, who are you to come in and tell me how to do this job? So it was an interesting dynamic, but I think, you know, we had respectful boundaries, and I think over time they appreciated that I was there to help them and make their role better. And that's really where I got exposure more to case management within HR as well, which was really interesting from my perspective, having been mainly in the transactional element, but also running a big team. There was over 100 people, running a big budget of kind of £3 million and getting a lot of experience there. And I enjoyed the systems element so much. We implemented a new HR payroll system, and I enjoyed that project so much. And I think I remember sitting in the office, strangely, in the council. Our director of service decided that we should all be in the same office, all the managers.
Right.
So you didn't sit with your team, you sat with all the other HR managers, which I found a really bizarre concept, and I didn't like it, if I'm honest. It felt a bit like an ivory tower. And especially because we were upstairs and the team were downstairs, it was literally that kind of upstairs,
it's quite
downstairs
common.
feel.
You know, when I started my career as well, so it was 20 odd years ago, it was really common for HR to be on the top floor, completely separate from everybody else.
But this was just the management team. So, and there were things like we weren't allowed to make a round of drinks because it took too long and it was public money we were spending. And that kind of situation. I remember thinking one day, all of my peers, probably with the exception of one or two, were 40 years my senior, had been in the same role, and unless the head of service, something awful happened to them, they weren't leaving anytime soon. So there was nowhere to progress. And I thought, I've really enjoyed the system element. It was transformational, a lot of hard work, and so I decided to move into systems. So I joined Phase 3 as employee number 5, first consultant, and 12 years later, a COO.
Here we are.
Yeah. So that's my story, and interested to hear yours as well.
Yeah. Gosh, winding back all those years. My very first role was in Asda, luckily lime green. So I think that sort of ran through my career. And I just worked behind the deli, actually. And I worked there after failing my A-levels due to sort of personal reasons. My dad was really unwell. It just wasn't a good time. So got the job behind the deli, worked there for a couple of years. And then it dawned on me that I felt like a failure. And it's a job that needed to be done. You know, no disrespect to anybody that does do that type of role. But I thought, I don't want to cut meat forever.
Yeah.
That's awful. Take that out. But that's not my forever job.
Yeah.
So I went home crying my eyes out to my mum and dad. My brother was really successful at university, doing really well, and I was just the failure. So they put me on a secretarial course where I learnt to type, I learnt to use Word, I learnt to use Excel, believe it or not. I think I've lost all those skills. Yeah, those skills soon went out the window. And good secretarial course. I thought, right, I'm going to get an office job. And I applied for a role called trainee HR assistant. I didn't even know what HR was. It just was a bit of admin, sounded okay, got the job. And it was at a charity hospital in London. Started working there in the HR department, doing things like the filing, entering absence from the paper, red book onto a spreadsheet. And that's how it all started, HR and payroll. So I had no idea what it actually was, but I really enjoyed it. And I worked for 2 women called Sheila and Christine. And it just struck me that they were really...
Didn't we see one of them recently? Didn't they attend the CIPD show? Or
She did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Came looking for you, I remember.
Yeah. If she's watching, that was one of my other managers, a lady called Danila. But I just remember thinking, like, wow, these are professional business women, and they'd actually have quite a lot of arguments. It was HR after all. Yeah. You know, you could hear them sort of pushing back, telling employees what the policies are, what the procedures are, helping managers to be proper managers. I thought, wow, you know, I want to be like them. So I worked my way up to an assistant, to HR advisor. And I was lucky enough that they then put me through university. So I got my CIPD level 8, I think it was. And just really enjoyed my HR career. And I stayed there for 8 years, had my son, decided it was time to move on to something different. And I got a job in the HR team at a housing association in London again. Really enjoyed it. A lot of HR generalist and employee relations aspects to the job. Decided to leave there because I didn't like the journey, basically up into London. And I saw a really interesting job advert all around HR systems, which I'm familiar with, but by no means technical. And it just was interesting to me because they wanted someone that had an interest in systems, but specifically didn't know them. Okay. And then I met our wonderful colleague, Kate, and it was the job at Phase 3. Met her a couple of times and was lucky enough to get the role of consultancy services manager at Phase 3. And that was 10 years ago and been here ever since.
Do you remember our first meeting?
Yeah, you picked me up. Like this random car pulled up at Wakefield train station, told me to get in. And then I think, did we go for a meal or something?
We went to a Regis office in Wakefield, which was next to the tip. So the smell was immense. And then we went to see a customer. One of our customers, we're still a customer today, actually.
Yes.
And who I think you're going to see tomorrow.
Yep.
But we went to see them and we shared a glass of wine over a meal that evening and got to know each other properly, didn't we? So yeah.
And it just, it seems so funny when you look back to that story, like how we both came from HR, then into tech, found Phase 3, and here we are.
Yeah. And I think that's true of all HR professionals. There's not many people who go through school thinking, I want to work in HR, is there?
That's right. But I think once you start it, you don't get out of it.
No.
There's something quite unique about HR. For me, it's the human aspect. There's always multiple changes going on, employment law, what's going on in your own organisation, the ability to change things, make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's what shines through.
So I also think, though, that those first jobs, the deli counter, the garden centre, the working in the hotel, they really do help shape you, don't they, in terms of skills. And I think, speaking to customers, for example, some people are so reluctant to speak to customers. And when you're on a shop floor in particular, you have to, don't you? And you build sales skills and those kind of things that you don't even think about at that age. Absolutely.
And I think that's where the world we live in today is so different, because we were I was forced into that job. My mum got me in the car and said, you're 17 now, dropped me off, there's your application form, made me do it. But that's where those people skills start to come through. And it concerns me when I was talking to one of my friends who works at a college, that her daughter was going through an interview, and it wasn't even with a person. The interview questions were just coming through on a screen and you had to sit there talking to a camera, answering the questions. Well, how is an 18-year-old going to develop those people skills, that confidence to talk to a human when they're just being interviewed by, I don't know, a camera, AI, whatever's working in the background? But you're absolutely right. It shapes you, working with people, understanding that we're all very different, different needs, different backgrounds, but ultimately we're all just human at the end of the day.
Yeah. And lots of talk about human versus AI lately as well, but we'll come on to that in future episodes.
Absolutely.
So we've got our first feature to do. So we've been introducing ourselves a little bit as well, but we're going to talk about back when we were green. So we're going to ask all our guests this question as well.
Yeah.
But was there anything that happened when you were green in HR that you remember and look back on thinking of a mistake that you made or something that you learned a hard way?
I think something, not necessarily learnt the hard way, but something that still sticks with me today is that you can't keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
And being in HR, whether it's, as an HR generalist or HR tech like we are, you can't keep everyone happy. And I remember we had a particular individual back in my early career when I first became an HR advisor. So a line manager came to me with some concerns about an individual that wasn't really pulling their weight in the team. So I felt it was best to give that person an opportunity and actually stand by my decisions at the time, give them the opportunity, coaching, space to change, space to improve. But we let it go on too long. And then as a result of that, the rest of the team became disengaged. They sort of rubbed off on other people. But then as we came to make the right changes, then nobody was happy.
Yeah.
As in, why are we all sort of feeling the consequences for somebody else's behaviour? So I learned at that time not to let things fester.
Yeah.
And again, that you can't keep everybody happy. I think I was so keen on giving that person maybe what they actually wanted, which was to sit around and not do very much all day. It was a mistake, because you've got to nurture people in the right way to get the best out of them, and make sure that that doesn't have a negative effect on others and then end up in that spiral.
Yeah, you're right, it is difficult, and sometimes it's a hard line between what's right for the business versus the individual.
Yeah.
And HR practitioners are also people at the end of the day, and sometimes you feel like saying to somebody, if I was your friend, I'd be telling you this, but as a HR person, I need to have this conversation
this is
with
the
you.
advice.
Yeah, it's very different, isn't it? Well, mine's probably is a mistake I made. In the early days working in recruitment, I was recruiting for it was a civilian role in the police. And we had all these applications, and this was back when blind shortlisting meant me going through CVs with a black pen and covering up names and anything that identified ages, etc. And I got the recruitment pack, paper, brown envelope from the manager. Used to have a sheet of paper, bulldog clip to the top, which was yes or no, and if they were guaranteed an interview through a disability scheme, etc. And for whatever reason, I misread the columns, and I rejected all of the people who were a yes, and invited all the people who were no to the interview.
When did they realise?
After I'd put the yeses in the confidential waste bin. So there was no way of working out who they were.
No.
The manager had a complaint from one of their team who was an internal candidate, and we didn't differentiate between internal and external candidates. Basically to say, I've not been shortlisted, and I would have thought I would have been. Can you explain why? And she thought, well, I did shortlist you. So came to see me. So yes, had a very angry civilian police member of staff at my desk, shouting at me for inviting the wrong people. So we sorted it out, and we got the right people interviewed, and obviously apologised. But it's one of those things that you'll do once, and then never again in your career.
Well, I have got another story.
Go on.
Another one where, I mean, it was going back a long time. Because we work in HR tech, I don't know if I should actually reveal this, but I'm going to be honest. I won't name the system, but you're going back, 15, maybe 20 years. So presumably they didn't have much security on this technology. And I did delete all the reasons for absences.
Whoops.
We did get it back because luckily it had been backed up. That wasn't my fault. Just to put it out there, I didn't know what I was doing, clicking around. I mean, obviously when we implement systems, we make sure that things like this can't happen, and you're going back a long way. So you could still see who'd been absent and the dates, etc. But I deleted all of the reasons. But looking back, it's actually quite funny, because I think there's about 600 reasons for sickness, because we'd type in on the self-certificate individual reasons. So I deleted 600 reasons for sickness.
Wow. Did you help put it right, though?
I did. Of course I did.
That's the main thing, isn't it? So I think we're almost at time for today.
Yes.
We've rattled on a little while, but we are going to be back next week, or in 2 weeks, actually. I think we're doing these fortnightly from now, so we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about people analytics. We've got a guest coming up in the next few weeks as well. So stick with us. It's been great to meet you, and hope you've enjoyed what you've heard today from us and got to know us a little bit more. And we will end today's session with what is making us green with envy right now. So I'll go first because I can see you're in thought, and I prepared this, so I've got an idea.
Okay.
So I recently saw a demo of a new solution, a learning management solution. And you saw this same demo as well.
I know who you're talking about.
And we're going to get them on as a guest in a future episode, hopefully, as well. So we'll not give too much away. But a learning management solution which is really effective. It takes long-form content, turns it into short-form content, makes it more engaging for people. And I look at our internal learning system, which I won't name because people often ask us for recommendations. And we do sometimes recommend what not to go with. But ours is clunky, outdated. The content that's on there isn't great. So I was at that demo at Unleash in Paris, which was very nice of us to be able to go to, wasn't it? And it made me green with envy, thinking I would really love that for our organisation. So we are now partnered with them, and we're getting it as part of our organisation, which is good news. But that made me green with envy, so I've given the green light to that decision, and we're going ahead.
Don't have to be envious anymore. My one, it's not a demo that I saw, but I actually read about an organisation that had gamified their payroll training.
Wow.
And I thought that sounds really cool, because it had on there different sort of questions, quizzes, games that you'd play. So it was really interactive. So instead of being something that's, like, I don't know, a payroll test or a payroll quiz, it was something that was quite clear, refreshing, and completely different. So I thought that sounds interesting, because payroll, from our point of view, it can be tricky and not everybody understands it. And especially when we think from our point of view, translating sometimes, it might be something that we could introduce as a training intervention for some of our customers, like a gamified experience, if you like, that sort of thing.
One of our most popular training sessions we used to deliver was payroll for non-payroll professionals. And we used to get a lot of senior HR people join that training because they used to want to know about the process, because it feels a bit like a dark art, doesn't it? And of course there is the payroll brick wall, which we'll discuss in future episodes as well. So
Good stuff.
We'll put a pin in that and cover that in a future episode, definitely. And if you've got any ideas about things you want us to cover in future episodes, then feel free to comment and let us know, or send your questions to us as well. But all that's left to say for now is thanks for joining us in the HR Green Room. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more honest conversations, some brilliant guests coming up, and of course the weekly Green with Envy and Greet Light moments. So don't forget to subscribe, share, and join the conversation. And until next time, keep giving the green light to the things that matter the most.